It didn't start with violence. It started with him calling her baby girl. She was just standing outside the Civic Center, hoodie up, hands in her pockets, eyes soft, calm. That was enough. He told her move. She didn't. So he stepped closer, stood too close, and leaned in with a smirk. Where you headed, sweetheart? Hiding something in that sweatshirt. Still nothing. He looked around, saw a few people nearby. No one watching close enough to care. So he touched her, grabbed her wrist, not to arrest her, just to prove he could. She didn't scream, didn't yank away. She just stepped back, shifted weight, and suddenly he wasn't holding her wrist anymore. He was on the ground, fast, silent, public. It wasn't dramatic. It was efficient, like someone who knew exactly how a body folds. He looked up, blinking. She stared down, face unreadable. Then she said, low and calm, "You need to check who you're touching," and walked away. She didn't run, didn't explain, didn't need to, because the damage was already done, just not to her. If you've ever watched someone get harassed for not looking like they belong, leave a comment. If you've ever said nothing and wished you had, share this. And if you're still here, still listening, hit subscribe. Some stories don't rise in anger. They fall into silence. She lived on the second floor of a building no one ever looked at twice. Not run down, not fancy. Just another beige box in a block of beige boxes. Concrete steps, metal railings. The kind of place you pass without remembering. She liked it that way. She left for work at the same time every morning, 6:42 a.m. Not because of traffic. Not because she needed that long to get anywhere. Just habit. The kind built over years. Years of precision, of consequence, of knowing that 1 minute too early or too late can be the difference between being seen or being stopped. She walked with purpose, always in sneakers, always with a black backpack that never sagged. Nothing loose, nothing clanging. Even her keys were padded with rubber so they wouldn't make a sound. She knew where every camera on her block pointed. She knew the name of every janitor in the buildings she passed, even if they didn't know hers. She always carried 2 phones, one powered off. She didn't like noise, not from people, not from music, not from herself. Her co-workers said she was quiet but cool. They meant she didn't talk unless needed, didn't share stories, didn't show her hand. They didn't know anything about her life. They didn't know she slept in a corner of her room, not in the center of her bed. Didn't know her back had 3 surgical scars. Didn't know she still checked her windows twice before going to sleep. Not out of paranoia, but out of memory. She worked in logistics, downtown office, government contract, paperwork, scheduling, tracking things no one saw, and no one thought to ask about. She was good at it. Too good, actually. Because when someone is efficient and quiet, people stop asking how. They just assume she was naturally organized. They didn't know that in a former life, she tracked enemy supply routes through satellite data, cross-referenced coordinates under time pressure, sleep-deprived, 40 hours into a blackout deployment with no backup. Now she just tracked trucks. No stress. No one yelling. Just missed details. Forgotten numbers. Lazy errors from people who assumed everything would be caught for them. She caught them, fixed them, didn't complain. And so they promoted her. But not too high, because she didn't network. Didn't do happy hour. Didn't open up. She used to get invites. Now she got forwarded memos. And honestly, that was fine, because silence gave her distance, and distance gave her peace. She didn't wear makeup, didn't straighten her hair, didn't smile unless something was actually funny. She wasn't rude. She just didn't perform. That made some people uncomfortable. There was a woman in her office, always cheery, always touching arms when she talked, who once said, "You should smile more. You have a nice face when you do." She had looked at her, then walked away, didn't respond. Later in the break room, someone else whispered, "She's kind of intimidating, huh?" What they meant was, she didn't give them anything to manage, and that scared them. She never told anyone she was in the military. There was no flag in her home, no bumper sticker, No photos on her desk. Only 2 people in her current life knew. Her landlord, because of a veteran housing voucher, and the therapist she stopped seeing after 4 sessions because he kept asking about your time overseas like it was a screenplay. She didn't tell them about the door in Fallujah. Didn't tell them about the underwater op where she was the only one who didn't throw up after surfacing. Didn't tell them she once spent 6 hours buried up to her chest in snow, holding a weapon steady, waiting for a signal that never came. They wouldn't understand, and she didn't need them to, because the more people know, the more they feel entitled to explain you to yourself. Every Sunday she ran, not for health, not for joy, for maintenance. She ran the same route, for miles flat, wore old shoes, kept the time just slow enough to not attract curiosity. Once, a man tried to flirt with her at a water fountain. She ignored him. He followed, until she stopped, turned around, and looked him in the eye for 4 long seconds. Not angry, not scared, just assessing. He walked away. She had friends, but not close ones. People she could call if her car broke down. People she could laugh with for an hour before it got too personal. Once, a neighbor tried to ask her out. She said no. He asked why. She said, "I don't do well with slow explanations." He said, "What does that mean?" She said nothing, and he never asked again. She had no social media. Her name didn't appear in search engines, but somewhere on a secure server, her full profile lived. Decorated service, classified tours, SEAL qualified, CQB certified, honorably discharged after a spinal fracture and long recovery. But that wasn't who she was anymore. She had shed it. The uniform, the chain of command, the mission briefings, the labels. She just wanted to breathe, to blend, to finally move through a world that didn't ask her to prove herself every time she entered a room. But even now, even without the uniform, she still felt it. The expectation, the gaze, the suspicion when she didn't perform softness, the discomfort when she didn't bend her voice around other people's comfort. So she stopped giving them anything to misinterpret. She just existed, clean, controlled, silent, a presence without permission. And that, somehow, was the thing most people couldn't accept. The morning of the incident, she had only gone out to wait for a friend. That's it. She stood outside the Civic Center, hoodie up, earbuds in, but no music playing. She just needed the shell, the quiet. She watched a man help his mother into a van, watched a child drop a juice box, then cry like it was the end of the world. She let the street breathe around her, until the cop approached, and everything she'd worked to leave behind came rushing back, not because she was unsafe, but because she had always been too trained to ignore a threat. Next came the choice, not to fight, but to stop pretending she couldn't. And everything after that was consequence, not action, just the world reacting to what it finally, belatedly recognized. She was never weak. She was never unsure. She was just choosing stillness, until someone decided she didn't deserve even that. She was standing beneath a small tree when he saw her. It was mid-morning, quiet, Civic Center sidewalk mostly empty, except for a few folks on lunch break and the city bus idling in the lane. She wore a dark hoodie, hands in pockets, back to the wall. To him, that meant suspicious. To her, it meant shade. But that wasn't the language his training had taught. So he approached. "Excuse me, ma'am." No reaction. She wasn't wearing earbuds. He could see that now. She just wasn't moving. "Ma'am," he repeated sharper. "You can't stand here." Still nothing. She wasn't hostile, not ignoring, just still. That irritated him. He stepped closer, close enough that he could smell her soap, clean, unscented. "Ma'am, again. You're loitering. I need you to move along." She looked at him this time. Just a glance. No fear. That's what got him. She didn't look startled or sorry. She looked unimpressed. "Are you waiting for someone?" he asked. No answer. He dropped his tone lower, turned it casual, the way he'd seen other officers do when trying to charm compliance. "You got somewhere to be, sweetheart?" Still silence. His voice cooled. "I'm gonna need to see some ID." No reaction. He took another step in, closer than necessary. You carrying anything you're not supposed to? Still no answer. Now he was smiling, but not out of warmth, out of challenge. I asked you a question, he said. I suggest you answer. She shifted her weight slightly, 1 foot forward. Subtle, barely visible. He didn't register it. He was too busy performing for a non-existent crowd. I don't know what you think this is, but this isn't one of those TikToks where you just stand there and assert your rights or whatever. You want to play that game, fine. We can do paperwork all day. Still silence. He reached out, tapped her shoulder, not gently. She didn't move. He did again. Harder. Don't make me detain you just 'cause you want to act tough. Her head turned slightly. Still no words. His tone changed. Look at me when I'm talking to you, girl. No one had called her that in years. Not to her face. Not and kept her dignity. But he had no way of knowing that. No idea what kind of line he just crossed. Because he didn't see her. He saw a silhouette. A hoodie. A face he didn't trust. A woman who didn't submit. He saw disobedience. He didn't see training. Didn't see restraint. Didn't see someone who had been taught how to dismantle a man in under 5 seconds using nothing but a pen. So he reached again. Grabbed her wrist. Hard. That was the moment. The one he'd never be able to take back. Because in that one touch, he gave her every legal and tactical justification to respond. But she didn't, not right away. She just looked at his hand, then at him, then slowly, almost gently, she stepped to the side and removed herself from his grip without force. But it still hurt. His wrist bent in a way he hadn't expected. Not broken, but enough to make him step back fast. It wasn't an attack. It was a lesson, one he didn't understand. So he shouted, "Hey, you think that's smart? You want me to cuff you?" Still no reply. She took 1 step forward, into the space he had just stepped back from. And now he felt it. The shift, not in her posture, in the room, in the way the air didn't feel like his anymore. He didn't know why, didn't know what changed. But his instincts, the real ones, under the badge, told him, "You messed up." Across the street, someone paused. A woman with a stroller. She didn't film. She just watched. That was worse, because now he had a witness, not to a crime, but to his failure. And so he tried to regain control, tried to make her the problem again. "What's your name?" She stared at him. "What's your name?" He repeated louder. Still nothing. He pulled out his radio, but before he could key the mic, she moved. Just one motion. Not violent, not frantic, just precise. A small pivot of her hips, a redirect of her foot. He blinked and found himself on the ground. No one screamed. No crowd formed. It wasn't dramatic. It was clean. He hadn't even felt the full force of the move. Just the shift in balance, the twist in his knee, the tilt of the world, and then pavement. She didn't pin him, didn't follow through. Just let him fall. Let the sidewalk humble him. And as he looked up, breath short, wrist throbbing, she leaned down, spoke for the first time. Low, neutral, deadly calm. "You don't have clearance for me." Then she walked. He didn't chase, didn't call for backup. He sat, on the ground, and somewhere deep inside, something broke. Not bone, not pride. Certainty. The certainty that the world always bent his way if he pushed hard enough. That silence meant weakness. That uniforms meant superiority. That a woman who didn't speak back was scared. All of it gone. In one step. One phrase. One fall. The woman with the stroller turned. Walked away. Didn't film. Didn't intervene. But later, she would tell a friend. He touched her like he owned the space. And she reminded him he didn't. The incident was filed as non-violent, non-injury, non-escalated. That's how he framed it. Just a strange encounter with a non-compliant civilian who resisted contact and caused a minor accidental fall. No weapons, no threats, no cause for further review. At least, that's how it should have ended. But the report wasn't the only thing moving through the system. There was also a name. And when it landed in the system, everything slowed. It started with Officer Harris, the precinct desk sergeant assigned to finalize the intake report. He pulled up the encounter, ready to close it. Opened the contact info the arresting officer had entered. There was no ID provided, so it was just an informal entry. A name she had never given. A local business owner who'd seen her around, recognized her, and offered it to the officer later that afternoon. Harris typed it in, hit verify, and the screen froze. Not glitched, not lagged, locked. A red box appeared at the top. Access denied, restricted classification level 3A. He blinked. That was odd. He tried again. Searched by partial name. Same result. He checked the spelling. Ran a manual search. Still locked. This wasn't normal. He'd seen sealed records, juvenile protections, witness shielding, but this wasn't any of that. This was a national security flag, and it didn't say why. Only who wasn't allowed to know, including him. He called a supervisor, lowered his voice. Hey, I got a name kicking back a level 3A block. 3A? Yeah, not even redacted, just walled off. You sure it's not a typo? Triple checked. She's real, but we're not cleared. His supervisor paused, then asked, what did she do? Harris shook his head slowly. Nothing. She was involved in something. No, she just stood there. And then the officer, well, he fell. Silence on the other end. Then, send me the file. That night, someone in the city's legal office got a ping. An internal alert, triggered automatically by any level 3A classification hit inside a municipal report. The flag came with a memo. Subject is not to be contacted. Subject is not to be followed. Any continued inquiry without federal clearance may result in administrative review. The city lawyer reading it sat back, read it again, then closed the file. Did not forward it. Did not log it. Just let it sit in the system. Quiet. Unresolved. The next morning, Officer Matson tried to re-access the report. He wanted to amend it, soften the wording, take out the line about the wrist pain. It had started to look bad when he told the story out loud, but the system bounced him. Access denied. You are no longer assigned to this incident. He called Harris. What gives? This is my report. Not anymore. What do you mean? It's off your desk, and it's above mine. That's not protocol. I'm aware. Elsewhere, in a government building 3 states away, a security clearance analyst noticed a keyword hit, a civilian report containing a name on the operationally shielded veteran list. The list wasn't long, and most of the names on it were never supposed to appear in police reports. She opened the file, saw the incident description. 1 officer, 1 woman, 1 resisted contact note, no charges. No response. Just a name. She picked up her phone and made a call to a restricted desk. Subject triggered a public contact report. Voice on the other end. Do they know? No. The system caught it before it went live. Send me the ID string. Already done. Back at the precinct, Harris received a new system message. Do not contact the subject. Do not speak to press. Let the file expire naturally. He read it twice, then did what he was told. 2 days later, the department received a quiet internal note. Officer Matson's report handling on case 49B has been reassigned for independent review. No action required. Do not notify subject. No explanation, but everyone knew what it meant. Someone higher up had seen the name and didn't want it mentioned again. Matson, meanwhile, felt the air shift. No one called him in. No one reprimanded him, but something was off. His next shift change came with no explanation. He was moved to traffic detail, then to desk. He asked why, got vague answers, then none. His body cam was pulled, even though it had malfunctioned during the incident. Someone higher up had accessed the footage log, not the video, just the log. Then it disappeared. At lunch, his colleagues were quiet. Someone asked how his wrist was. He said, it's fine. Someone else asked if he'd filed an injury report. He said, no need. They nodded, didn't press, and didn't invite him to the next patrol. Later that week, someone whispered in the locker room, You know who she was? Who? The one you touched? Madsen turned. No. Why? She was in. Like deep. In what? Military. Special ops or something. Heard the system flagged her file. Won't even say why. He scoffed. She's just some. The other cop looked up. No, she's not. Madsen opened his mouth to argue, then didn't, because suddenly he remembered how fast she moved, how stable she stood, how calm she was, and how no one at all, had come to defend her, because she hadn't needed it. And now, no one was coming to defend him either. Later that month, at a private law enforcement training session, someone brought up the case as a cautionary tale without names, just the facts. Public encounter, assumed noncompliance, force initiated. Turned out subject was SEAL qualified. Operational clearance. Officer is no longer field active. No disciplinary record, but no reassignment either. Someone asked, what happened to her? Instructor shrugged. She walked away, then added softly, and when she did, the room changed. Officer Lisa Brandt had been with the department for 9 years, never written up, never in the paper. The kind of cop who followed the rules and didn't ask questions she didn't want answers to. She wasn't best friends with Madsen, but they'd worked the same district for years. Grabbed coffee after long shifts, shared notes, covered each other on messy calls. She knew his rhythms, his temper. He was a bit of a showman, a little sharper when people were watching, but she'd never seen him cross the line until that day. She wasn't assigned to the incident. She was coming back from a call nearby, headed to the Civic Center for a restroom break and a cup of weak vending machine coffee. She turned the corner and saw him, standing too close to someone. A woman, hood up, still as a wall. Lisa slowed her pace, watched from across the street. She heard his voice, not the volume, the tone that says, I'm not here to de-escalate. I'm here to dominate. She'd heard that tone before, never liked it, but in this job, tone wasn't a reportable offense. So she stayed across the street, watching. She saw him touch the woman's shoulder, saw her not react, saw him grab the wrist, saw the woman not pull, just pivot, and then Madsen was on the ground. Lisa froze, not in fear, in recognition. That wasn't luck, that was training. She'd seen it before, in a seminar years ago, hosted by a guest instructor who used to work somewhere special. He demonstrated a balance strip, one step, one shift, and the other person loses their footing. Done right, the target can't even explain how they fell. She'd seen it once. Now she saw it again, live, in silence. When the woman walked away, Lisa didn't follow. She didn't radio for backup. She just watched her leave, and something settled in her gut that didn't go away. Back at the station, Madsen told the story like it was a misunderstanding. Said the woman was acting strange. Said he tried to question her. Said she jerked away and knocked him off balance. He made it sound clumsy. Funny even. A few officers laughed. Lisa didn't. She looked down at her paperwork and kept her mouth shut. Later that day, she checked the report. It didn't match what she saw. There was no mention of tone, of proximity, of how he grabbed her before asking for ID. There never is. But Lisa still didn't say anything. She just made a note in her own little notebook, the one she didn't turn in. 3 words. He crossed it. The next morning, the shift commander pulled her aside. You were nearby yesterday, right? She nodded. You see anything? She paused, then said, just the end of it. He nodded, like that was enough. Didn't ask for more. Didn't want more. 2 days later, she tried to pull up the woman's name in the system. Couldn't. Red screen. Restricted access. That was new. She didn't push. But something inside her clicked. Whatever this woman had been before, civilian wasn't the whole story. And Madsen had no idea. At lunch, he brought it up again. Crazy, right? 1 second I'm telling her to move. Next second I'm face down. He chuckled, then added too casually. She didn't look like much. Probably one of those PTSD cases. Lisa looked up. You don't know that. He blinked. What? You don't know what she was? He smirked. I know what she looked like. That silence returned, and Lisa didn't laugh, didn't nod, didn't say a word, just stood up and walked away. She didn't report him, but she didn't back him anymore either. No more cover. No more, that's just how he is. No more filling in the blanks on his half-finished paperwork. Over the next week, she started noticing things. He'd walk into a room, and people stopped talking. He'd offer to take a patrol shift, and someone else had already signed up. He'd speak in meetings, and no one answered. Lisa said nothing, but she stopped sitting next to him. Then came the kicker. She overheard two newer recruits talking by the lockers. One whispered, "Did you hear about that woman?" The other said, "Yeah, she's like classified, ex-military or something." She dropped him without even trying. Lisa turned the corner, made eye contact. They froze. She didn't scold, just said calmly, then maybe he should stop telling the story like it was funny, and walked on. Madsen asked her once, days later, "You believe all that crap?" She said, "I believe what I saw." He didn't ask again. In the weeks that followed, Lisa made quiet shifts in her routine. She triple-checked every stop she made, asked more questions before getting out of the car, started watching body cam footage when no one else bothered to review it. She stopped laughing at bad jokes, and when someone made a comment about a difficult-looking civilian, she simply said, "Careful, that's what they said about her." Then went back to typing. No one ever called her brave. No one even noticed the change. But in every small moment where she used to play along, she stopped. One morning, she came in early and found a new recruit sitting alone. He looked nervous, said he'd been reassigned off Madsen's patrol rotation without explanation, asked if he'd done something wrong. Lisa sat down next to him, said, "You didn't." He looked at her, eyes wide, then whispered, "Is it true that she used to be one of them?" Lisa didn't answer, just looked straight ahead, and said, "Some people don't need to tell you who they were. They let the silence do it." That day, she logged into the system and removed herself from the optional partner backup list, a passive setting that allowed officers to choose who they'd assist on short notice. She unchecked Madsen's name, didn't explain it, didn't announce it, but someone in admin saw the update, and then someone else did the same, and another, until one day, Madsen called for backup, and no one answered, not out of spite, out of choice. He never knew Lisa had started it. She never claimed credit, never said a word, but she watched the air around him change, watched the silence settle over him like a shadow he couldn't shake, and she knew what it was. Not punishment, not revenge, just a slow, collective decision. Let him stand alone. He earned it. The first sign was the schedule. He logged into the system on Monday and saw his patrol block had changed. No explanation, no message, just a shift, off his usual beat, placed on desk duty for the week. He assumed it was a glitch. Messaged Sergeant Keener, "Hey, saw I'm off rotation this week. You want it covering desk?" Keener left it on read. No reply. He went in anyway. Reported as usual. The desk was cluttered with parking complaints, noise ordinance follow-ups, and a couple of case reviews that had already been closed. Nothing challenging, nothing that needed him. He asked if there was anything else he could take. They told him, "Just hold here for now." He held, but no one asked him to move again. Tuesday, he got lunch alone. The usual crew, Lisa, Jordan, Deeks, had all ordered ahead. He saw the bags already on their desks when he returned with his own sandwich. No invite. He walked past Lisa, tried to catch her eye. She didn't look up, didn't smile, just kept typing. Wednesday. His name wasn't on the weekly briefing list. That was weird. He was always looped in, even if his calls weren't high priority, even if he didn't speak. Now, the calendar didn't even include him. He hovered his cursor over the meeting room code, clicked, request access. Got this message. This event is restricted to active patrol assignment leads. But he was a lead, wasn't he? Thursday, someone changed the locker combinations. He didn't get the email. Showed up, Tried his code, nothing. Had to get someone from admin to buzz it open. The girl behind the desk looked up his badge number, then frowned. "You didn't get reassigned?" He said. "Reassigned to what?" She blinked, then said, too quickly, "Never mind." Friday, he stopped by the precinct cafe. The barista, a retiree named Al, used to hand him a free donut with his coffee every time. This time, Al just handed the cup. No smile, no nod, just $2.60. Matson pulled out cash. Waited. Al didn't say a word. That weekend, he sat at home, phone in hand, flipped through group chats that hadn't pinged in days. Typed, "Y'all good?" Deleted it. Typed again, "Lisa, can we talk?" Deleted that too. Put the phone down. Picked it back up. Searched the name again. Hers. The woman. Still no public record. Just that red banner in the report system. That line in his notes. Subject refused to comply. Resisted minor detainment. It didn't sound like much when he first wrote it. Now it read like a trigger. Monday morning, he showed up early. Tried to get ahead of the shift meeting. He walked into the conference room. Took his usual seat. People walked in. Looked at him. Then sat 2 chairs away. No one said hello. Captain Hughes walked in. Glanced over and frowned. Said, "Didn't you get the update?" "What update?" "You're not assigned to this debrief." "I was last week." Hughes stared at him, voice flat. "You're not this week." That night, he called his brother. Talked about football, the weather, anything but this. His brother asked, "You good?" He said, "Yeah, just tired." But he wasn't tired. He was circling, trying to name the feeling. It wasn't guilt. He still didn't think he'd done anything wrong. It was something else. Something colder. He woke up at 3:13 a.m. Heart racing. No dream. Just a soundless weight on his chest. He sat on the edge of his bed. Rubbed his wrist, the one she'd slipped from. It still hurt sometimes. The physical ache was gone. But the memory of it, how quickly she'd neutralized him, lingered. He remembered her eyes. They hadn't been angry. They'd been bored. As if this wasn't even worth the energy. That somehow stung more than rage ever could. By Thursday, his access to the mobile app was cut. Badge check-in failed. He had to be buzzed into the building. No one explained why. The new guys, rookies, still in field training, whispered when he walked past. He caught part of it. That's him. Didn't need to hear more. He tried to talk to Lisa again. Cornered her in the hallway. "Hey, you got a second?" She stopped. Looked at him. "I don't think so." "You won't even hear me out." "I already did. I was there, remember?" He paused. "You think I deserve this?" She didn't answer. Just walked away. He filed a request to transfer to a neighboring district. No response. Followed up. Got an auto reply. "Your request is under review. Estimated processing time, 6 to 8 weeks." He used to get approvals in days. He stopped going out. Stopped checking the department portal. Stopped calling in. No one noticed. Or if they did, no one said anything. And that was worse than being punished. It meant he didn't matter enough to punish. One night, he sat in his car outside the Civic Center. Watched the spot where she'd stood. The wall. The sidewalk. Tried to remember what he'd said exactly. Tried to replay it. Where did it shift? What word turned the moment? He couldn't tell anymore. It all felt blurred. Smugness. Training. Power. Habit. It wasn't that he thought she was dangerous. It's that he never thought she could be anything other than ordinary. And now she was the exception that made his entire routine collapse. He didn't tell anyone what he was feeling. There were no words for it. Not regret. Not shame. Something smaller. Slower. Like erosion. The following Monday, his keycard didn't work. Not at the gate. Not at the back entrance. Not even at the vending machine. He asked security. They said to check with HR. He did. Got voicemail. No call back. He went home. Sat at the kitchen table. And for the first time in his career, the first time in his life, he realized no one was going to tell him when the end arrived. They were just going to let him fade, like background noise, like an outdated file left unopened until it expires, like someone who had once been necessary, but never actually needed. She never told anyone, not her landlord, not her manager, not the friend she'd been waiting for that day. No police report, no online post, no "I'm okay" message, because there was nothing to explain. He had grabbed her. She had moved. He had fallen. That was it. And for her, that was enough. 3 days after the incident, she received a form in the mail, a routine renewal packet from a national veteran mentorship program she'd quietly joined years ago. They matched former special ops veterans with transitioning service members. She'd been paired with a new mentee every 6 months. Most were young, full of questions, full of bravado. She never talked about what she'd done, just helped them figure out how to be still again. The letter said, "We'd love to renew your role. No obligation, just check the box and return." She stared at the paper for a long time, then set it aside. Didn't sign, didn't decline, just didn't reply. That was her decision. Not loud, not public, not political, just the decision to step away. From mentorship, from visibility, from systems that had used her service as a badge of progress, but still made space for men like him. She'd always stayed quiet, thinking her presence helped balance something, that her calm made the room smarter. But now, she no longer wanted to be the counterexample. She no longer wanted to be the exception. So she folded the form, slipped it into the trash, and went on with her day. At her job, nothing changed. She still filed logistics updates, still caught errors before they became delays, still attended meetings without speaking unless necessary. But something in her posture shifted. She stopped holding doors for people who never said thank you, stopped answering emails with "sure, happy to help" when she wasn't happy, stopped nodding when someone mispronounced her name, just waited, let the silence sit, let them feel the absence of assumed agreement. At first, people thought she was tired. Then they thought she was moody. Then they stopped trying to explain it, because whatever she wasn't performing anymore. She used to say yes to everything that kept her invisible. Now she said nothing, and let the world decide what to do without her. One afternoon, her manager asked if she could mentor a new intern. Someone in HR had heard she was great with structure. She said, "Not this quarter." No smile, no softening. The manager blinked. "Oh, okay, sure." Didn't push, didn't ask why. Just felt the boundary and backed off. At the gym, a man asked if she could spot him real quick. She said no, didn't explain. He stood there awkwardly, then turned away. In the grocery store, a security guard followed her one aisle too long. She turned, looked him in the eyes, didn't say a word. He walked away. At night, she walked her block a little slower, not in fear, in awareness. She knew the difference between being targeted and being watched. What had happened that day at the Civic Center wasn't new. It wasn't shocking. It was just the first time someone made the mistake of touching her. Now, they wouldn't. Not because they feared her, but because she was no longer giving them the benefit of doubt. She turned off location, sharing on her phone. Not for safety, for sovereignty. She closed the private veterans forum she used to log into once a week. Didn't post a goodbye, just logged out, let the account go stale. One night, she received a text from a former teammate, someone she deployed with back in the snow, back in the heat, back when they only had each other and adrenaline and silence. "Hey, you good?" She stared at the message, then typed, "I'm quiet." Hit send. He replied, "That says more than you think." She didn't reply again. She canceled her next volunteer shift at the shelter. They asked if she'd reschedule. She said, "Not right now." No anger, no drama, just not today. Maybe not again. At a city outreach event, a photo of her had once been used in a recruitment brochure. She saw it on a poster, cut her out with a marker, walked away. No one noticed right away. No one called her. No one asked what was wrong. Because the thing about quiet women is, People only noticed them when they stopped carrying what no one else wanted to hold. Weeks passed. She said no 3 more times. To small things. Simple asks. Each time, she felt something loosen in her chest. Not pain. Not freedom. Something in between. A release. One morning, she sat at her kitchen table with a cup of tea and watched the sun hit the same corner of the window it always did. She used to love this routine. Now it felt like camouflage. She didn't need camouflage anymore. She needed air. She opened her closet, took out the box, the one with the uniform, not folded with pride, just precision, not kept for display, just memory. She laid it on the table, stared at the name tag, the patches, the weight of it. Then, with slow fingers, she removed the badge, not out of shame, out of closure. She placed it in a smaller envelope, taped it shut, wrote one word on the front, done, then slid it into the back of a drawer she rarely opened. Not everything needed a ceremony. Some things just needed a decision, and she had made hers. She would no longer carry the burden of reminding this city what grace looked like. Let them find their own example. She was done performing forgiveness. It started in the Monday logistics meeting. 10 minutes in, someone mentioned a delivery backlog. They all turned to her seat. It was empty. No one had noticed until that moment. No one had said anything when she didn't join the Zoom. But now the room felt off. Her name was still on the calendar invite, still on the prep notes, still listed as the one who signed off on routing conflicts. But she wasn't there, and no one had checked why. Someone emailed her, got no reply. They waited a day, then another, still nothing. So they assumed she was out sick. Only she wasn't. She just didn't respond, didn't set an out of office, didn't send a handoff, didn't explain. And that silence, that lack of explanation, sat heavier than a loud departure would have, because no one knew how to interpret it. The intern she declined to mentor started making avoidable mistakes. Late filing, wrong codes, missed verification steps. Small things, but they rippled. The systems didn't crash, but they creaked. The senior team whispered, "Maybe she's burned out." Someone else said, "Maybe she's just done." No one corrected them, because no one knew anymore. At a quarterly all-hands, the VP of Operations referenced her report from last quarter, a tidy forecast that had helped them avoid a major vendor issue. He paused halfway through the citation, then asked offhand, "She's still with us, right?" No one answered, just shifting eyes. Then someone coughed and changed the slide. At the Veteran Mentorship Program, her mentee emailed the coordinator, "Hey, I haven't heard back. Is she okay?" The coordinator checked. Her name was still in the system, still listed as active, but she declined the last 3 assignments. The coordinator called. No answer. Sent a follow-up. Still nothing. So the file was marked, withdrawn, no reason given. And that was that. Weeks passed, and then the small things started to pile. A shipment didn't arrive. No one flagged it in time. A form was submitted late. No one caught the error. A partner request got misrouted. Nothing big, but she would have seen it. She would have said something. Quietly. Early. Now no one did. And the damage kept adding up. Like a leak that no one saw. Until the floor started warping. At her old precinct, Lisa kept hearing her name. Not aloud. Not fully. But in sentences like, "Wasn't there someone who used to handle this part?" Or, "We had someone who noticed these details before, didn't we?" Lisa never answered, because to name her now would be to admit that they'd let her leave without asking why. And no one wanted to say that out loud. One day, Matson overheard 2 rookies talking in the break room. "I heard she used to do intel." "Like federal?" "Nah, like Black Ops. SEAL or something." "Why'd she leave?" The first rookie shrugged. "Maybe she saw too much." Matson said nothing, just sat in the corner with his coffee. No one invited him into the conversation. They never did anymore. He checked the system that night. Her report was still locked, still red, still sealed behind access he would never have. He typed her name into a search bar just to see. Nothing. Then he closed the tab and stared at the screen. In a diversity committee meeting, Her name came up again, this time as someone who used to quietly model leadership. Used to. They listed her among formerly active contributors. Someone muttered, "She never really left, did she?" But no one could answer, because she hadn't resigned, hadn't made a scene. She had just stopped holding the space, and the silence she left behind had grown heavier than the noise she'd never made. A former mentee sent her a card, wrote, "You helped me remember how to breathe. I hope you're breathing too." No return address. She kept it in her drawer, didn't reply, but she read it twice. The man who had touched her, the one who fell and never stood back up the same way, began to feel it most. Not from a demotion, not from formal reprimands, from absence. No backup, no referrals, no invites, no rumors, not even whispers. Just a wide, cold space around his name. Like no one wanted to be caught too close when the rest of the floor gave out. When he filed a request to transfer out, again, it bounced. Not denied, just marked. Pending review, indefinite. He asked someone in HR what that meant. They said, "It means you wait." And hung up. The captain's office stopped answering his messages. The commissioner didn't respond to his letter. Even his union rep said, "You may want to lay low for a while." He asked why. The rep said, "Sometimes things don't get written down." Then didn't elaborate. At a community police forum, a local organizer said, "There was someone once, I don't remember her name, but she made people feel seen." Then added, "That's missing now." The captain nodded, didn't say who it was, didn't need to. Her name still lived in systems, still technically employed, still technically connected, but everyone felt it. She was gone, and they didn't know how to replace her. Not because she did everything, but because she quietly kept everything from tipping. Now it was tipping, and no one had words for it, only reactions. Even those who never knew her, only knew of her, began to ask, who was she? Where did she go? Why did she never speak? And the answer every time was the same. She didn't need to. The first thing to break was the program, a mid-tier federal grant aimed at officer wellness and tactical stress reduction. He'd applied for it months ago, got shortlisted, had already drafted the proposal. Even the captain said, "Looks like it's yours to lose." He lost it. No email, no explanation. He logged into the portal. His status, withdrawn, compliance check failed. He filed a dispute. No reply. Tried again. Still nothing. Then someone from an internal affairs adjacent department called him off record. Said just one thing. "It's not about something you did. It's about who doesn't want to vouch for you anymore." Click. The second thing to fall was his seat at the advisory council. He wasn't even told. Just logged in one day and saw his profile removed from the member page. No vote. No statement. Just gone. He called the liaison. They said, "We're reconfiguring our public-facing personnel." He asked, "Did I do something wrong?" They said, "No comment." That phrase stuck. Not no. Not "you're fine." Just, no comment. At home, his fridge buzzed too loud. The hallway light flickered. A child down the hall ran when he walked by. None of this was new, but now he noticed, because now he was quieter, and silence had started to feel like a message. At the gym, the guy who always spotted him avoided eye contact. At the coffee shop, the barista who used to remember his order asked, "Name for the cup?" At the gas station, his card declined. Not for insufficient funds, just a glitch. But it took 5 minutes to resolve, and no one apologized. He called Lisa. She didn't answer. Texted, "You got second?" She read it. Didn't reply. He sent an email to the captain. "I want to clarify a few things. I think there's been a misunderstanding." No reply. 3 days later, the message bounced, inbox disabled. He checked the portal again. His file now had an internal note he couldn't open. He requested a copy. Got a generic letter. Some records are not subject to employee access. He reached out to the union, asked if he could appeal something. Anything. They said he wasn't under disciplinary review. That's what made it worse. There was no official action, no record to fight, just evaporation. Meanwhile, things kept shifting. He was moved again, now off desk duty, onto building checks. Unarmed, no partner, technically still employed, but never called to briefings, never tagged for community outreach, never introduced to new hires. He became a ghost in the building where he used to bark orders, and people walked through him like fog. Then came the public incident, unrelated to him on paper, but it hit too close. Another officer, different district, roughed up a man outside a housing office. Video leaked, went viral, and someone somewhere posted a comment beneath the footage. Just like that woman last fall. You think they'd learn? It wasn't tagged, no names, but he saw it. So did others, and it spread. A quiet rumor, slinking through feeds and Slack threads. There was someone else, right? Didn't you work near here? Wasn't there a sealed report? The department said nothing, but the eyes in the building shifted, and he felt them. He sat in his car one night and tried to remember how it felt to be respected. Not feared, not tolerated, respected. He couldn't, because even when they smiled back then, he realized now, it had never been about him. It had been about his proximity to power. And now that he didn't have it, he was just a man who had once touched someone he never should have. One morning, he received a letter. Plain envelope, no return address. Inside, a single sentence. Typed, "You are now on the outside of a silence that once held you." No signature, no threat, just a truth. That week, his badge stopped unlocking the secure door. Admin told him it was a system update, but when he asked for a new card, they said, "Let's wait and see what happens." He didn't ask what that meant, because he already knew. At roll call, he stood alone. No one assigned him anything. He wasn't dismissed.